Hi guys, it's Monica. We are on vlog number 5, and this week was a fun week because I watched the Disney film Fantasia. It's a 1940 American animated film that was produced by Walt Disney and released by Walt Disney Productions. The story was directed by Joe Grant and Dick Humer, and Ben Sharpstein supervised the production. This film was the third Disney animated feature film that includes 8 animated segments of classical music. The music was directed by Leopold Stokowski, and 7 of the animated segments were performed by the Philadelphia Orchestra. Production costs grew significantly during the 1940s and what they could afford, so Disney decided to do a short and feature-length film with multiple segments of classical pieces. The soundtrack was recorded by using audio channels, which was then reproduced by a Fantasound. A Fantasound was a sound reproduction system that made this film the first commercial film in stereophonic sound. The movie was first released as a theatrical roadshow in 13 cities in the US on November 13, 1940, and it was unable to make profit as much as they hoped for because of World War II, and so that cut off its distribution ties to the European market. The film was reissued multiple times, with the original film and audio deleted, modified, and restored to the original version sometimes. So it depended on the year. Sometimes they would delete some stuff, and sometimes they would bring back other versions of the movie. So it all depended on the year, honestly. And the film became the 23rd highest grossing film, and the franchise grew into video games, Disneyland, Disney World attractions, and live concerts and plays. And personally, I know you guys might judge me, I have not been to Disney World or Disneyland yet, and I really need to go. But I did grow up watching this movie, so I did watch this movie when I was 3. It's considered the 5th greatest animated film and 58th of the greatest film in the 100 Years, 100 Movies. The film mainly consisted of classical music masterpieces with visuals that were so imaginative. There were 8 animation sequences that were so colorful and free-flowing and abstract. I'll go into the detail of the story that I thought that was the most important of the 8 segments. So the story goes is that Mickey Mouse is a young apprentice to the sorcerer, and when the sorcerer takes a nap, Mickey takes his magic hat and gains his powers. Mickey then falls asleep and the dreams of taking over the universe and enchanting it. In real life, he has powers that allows the broom to take in the water, but in the dream, the broom takes in more and more water until Mickey finally wakes up and finds a flood of water. And so he tries to fix the situation, but it turns out to be a really huge mess. And the sorcerer finally appears and restores order with his powers. The story then goes on to tell the evolution of life and where it goes from single-celled animals to the death of dinosaurs. There were ostriches, hippos, elephants, and alligators. Then we see the force of the darkness and the light go against each other, and it shows a coming of a new day. The movie, I would say, you really have to see this film to understand what is really going on, because each of the 8 segments in the movie all had different meanings and all had just a really deep meaning and deep theme to it as well. I really like this movie because of the nostalgia. The film was a concert film, and it integrated musical compositions and choreographed animation. The frameworks included areas of prehistoric times, the 4 seasons, hell and heaven, and the themes of darkness and light, chaos and order, dancing animals, legend, and classical myths. I did find it to be a bit controversial, though, and stereotypical. There were bare-treated centerettes and racial depictions because of the Hays Code. There were strict rules where the figures were covered with flower bras for cover-ups, even after they were swimming topless, which was uncensored when they were in the waterfall and in the pond. In later releases of the film, in the Pastoral Symphony segment, there were 2 black Nubian and zebra centaurs that were taken out. Another scene that was taken out was a very small black child with braided hair named Sunflower, who shined really, really bright, by the way. And there were different versions of this movie, like I said earlier, where they did come out. So they would, like I said, take out certain scenes of the movie, and then later on would bring it back in. So the version that I saw was the very first version in the 1940s. Did have that was a different time, so I did have to remember that when I was watching this movie before, and it was interesting to view it as an adult. I couldn't believe that it had such a deep symbolism in the animation, where the movement and the speech had a reflection on the meaning in the story. The nature of the animation became an illusion full of magic. I was obsessed with Walt Disney's animation and remember being 3 and loving all the colors and the crazy abstract things that were happening. I obviously didn't know what the themes meant or what they were supposed to mean, but I also really did think it did have like a positive effect on me, mainly because everything was just talking about like good and evil and what I should be seeing and what was appropriate at that time. Again, I didn't really look in. Obviously, I was 3 years old, so I didn't really look into the racism or the stereotypes that they had in that movie. I just kind of absorbed the good out of that, if that makes any sense. I'm going to go back to talking about how this movie was made during World War II, so there were a lot of hidden messages and a lot of propaganda as well. There was a lot of symbolism of the brooms in the water and Mickey Mouse's outfit that represented a woman's role in 1940s America. There was a shadow of the broom that in a scene that looked like a feminine silhouette and curved waistline. Mickey also wears a red gown and a blue hat with stars, which signified the American flag. Women just joined the military to do non-combat roles and worked in civilian jobs during this time as well. Walt Disney was definitely known to use propaganda in his movies to talk about the roles in society and the roles in war. I do think that this movie was teaching children the difference between good and evil, but I also think that this movie was for adults in some ways too, because it had themes regarding about their role in society and war, and it was also teaching children about what was going on during this time as well. So I think that is kind of important to make children acknowledge what is really going on in the world, even through a fantasy, but also trying to make them understand it as well. So there was a fantasy where the shadows in the movie played a larger role than the characters themselves. So you would have like Mickey Mouse, the character, and like the broom, but like right behind them, right behind the characters, there were just these really sharp, distinct, rich shadows, which was overwhelming in its presence. But they'd be doing its like the shadows would be doing its own thing, and they'd be playing their own like tricks and their own roles in the movie too. So the shadows were kind of characters of their own in some ways. Overall, this movie was quite wonderful and included so many deep meanings and lessons that are good for children to understand. When I have children, I'm going to make them watch these movies as well. I think they're great. This movie was memorable when I was a child and is still memorable to me today.